Welcome as we continue in personal finance and talking about personal savings in chapter 14. When you look at this whole area of savings, you need to recognize that wealth is typically created by a career or a vocation over a long time frame and involves a plan of spending. In other words, you cannot bank your future. You cannot guarantee that you're going to hit it big and going to have the jackpot that is going to create instant savings. In the Western world, the United States is especially is one of the lowest percentage of savings countries in the entire world. In other words, we have no margin in our finance for when things come along that are unexpected, when we have the emergencies, when we want to, in essence, save for something that is of greater benefit in the future. We need to understand when we talk about savings that there is no such thing as a guaranteed investment. There's no such thing as, boy, if you put your money away in this nest egg, that you're guaranteed that it will always be there at this particular rate of return, unless that rate of return is a very low percentage. The world tells us that the faster that you can get rich, the faster you can get savings, the better it is. In fact, most of what is out there is really geared towards get rich quick. But that is in direct contrast to the whole priority of Madison Avenue and just what the world is screaming at us to spend and enjoy first. When we talk about savings, it's important again just to remind ourselves of the time value of money. And I want to just give you two examples here. The first one is this. If you make a one-time investment of $1,000, in other words, you just put it away someplace and you earn 3% per year on that $1,000, how long is it going to take for that money to double? Well, it'll take 24 years at 3% for that $1,000 to become $2,000. And you sit there and go, woohoo! It doesn't sound very high. But if you were to then take a different tack and said, okay, I'm going to put away $1,000 a year, and it still earns 3%, but now it's an additional $1,000 every single year I'm going to put savings. What would you have after 20 years? What would you have after 40 years? So if you just did $1,000 one time, it would take you 24 years to double. But in 20 years, you would have $27,000 if you put away $1,000 a year. What would you have in 40 years? You'd have $78,000. And you look at that and go, okay, well, that's not that exciting, I guess. That's a long time for not much money. But if interest rates go up, amazing things begin to happen. For example, we look at our example here, putting away $1,000 a year, and it earns 3% a year. Do you know what you would have after, if it were at 8%, what you would have after 40 years? You would have $259,000. $259,000 for just putting $40,000 in total in the bank. That just shows you just the power of savings and the power of the time value of money and the compounding effect. So I want to give you just some, again, this is just words of wisdom with respect to just prioritizations for building up personal savings. Step number one, and we've talked about this in the past, is the absolute necessity of paying off credit card debt and refusing to carry balances. Now, I'm going to say I haven't talked much about credit cards, but I'm going to say this is if you are using a credit card for anything other than just not carrying cash in your wallet, in other words, you are not paying that credit card off by the end of the month, cut up your credit card. You get people who say, well, wait a minute, that's how we build a credit rating. But if you don't have the self-discipline to live within your means, the credit card is allowing you to live outside of your means. Now, I happen to carry credit cards in my wallet because I don't want to carry that much cash. And there's just an ease of use, but I don't carry balances over. I don't incur those finance charges. And that allows me to then be able to put money elsewhere, like savings. A second thing for savings prioritization is to set aside an emergency fund. I tell people that you should always have about 3 to 4 months worth of wages minimum. 6 months is even better, but 3 to 4 months aside that you have set aside for those things that happen in life. Sometimes you may have unexpected medical expenses. The car breaks down. You need to all of a sudden the refrigerator breaks and you need to call a repairman out. The plumbing, bursts the pipe. I mean, there's so many different things that can happen in life. And if you don't have that margin of an emergency fund, what do? You're almost forced to then, if you don't have the cash on hand, to start to use a credit card. And then the whole cycle starts all over again. Step number 3 is after you set aside an emergency fund, start to save for major purchases. Start to save. You know you're going to need that new washer dryer. Start putting money aside into the washer dryer. You know that you're going to have to buy a car. You may be saving for a home purchase. Do what is necessary to set that aside. Step number 4 is to begin as soon as possible to save for long-term needs. These long-term needs may be for additional college schooling that you're going to go to. It may be for retirement. It may be for paying off your home mortgage or starting your own business. When you look at where your priority, a lot of times people want to jump down to number 4 first, but you need to work your way through steps number 1, 2, 3, and 4 before you get there. And step number 5, which I don't have on here, but just as a word of encouragement, don't give up. Just like paying off debt, paying into a savings account has long-term benefits if you keep at it on a regular, systematic basis, and it becomes an intentional part of spending in life.